I'm not a big fan of management accounts and just throwing them out the door and going, there's a set management accounts. Because 99% of our clients are not financially trained. So why the hell would I just throw them a set of management accounts without helping them to understand and explain it to them and understand what the impact and potential opportunities are within the business?
Today I'm joined by someone who's not just an accountant. This is a guy who's been in the trenches with business owners over the years, and he's now educating them to make better decisions. Today I am joined by Dale Pollitt of Ryan's Accountancy over in Bolton. Dale, welcome to the Director First podcast, mate. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. How are we, buddy? You well?
I'm good, yeah. I've had a little bit of hay fever this week.
Okay.
So if I start touching my nose, it's nothing sinister. I've just got some allergies that are causing me problems.
Noted, mate.
And on top of that, I've got 3 kids that have had chicken pox over the last 4 weeks. So, yeah. It's been a tough time. I come to work for a bit of a rest.
I can imagine.
Listen, first of all, just to get us into the vibe of things, first question for you. What's the number one myth about accountants that drives you mad?
I'd say probably the absolute number one, is accountants know about tax. Okay, they do this much tax training, very, very little.
Yeah.
And it kind of aggravates me. I'm also a chartered tax advisor as well as a chartered accountant, and people don't realise the value in going to a specialist tax advisor versus an accountant, especially on complex transactions.
Absolutely. In fact, we're going to unpack that in a little bit more, because the whole idea of like the perception of what an accountant can do, what an accountant should do, what you're asking your accountant to do for you is a minefield. And I see so many problems on directors because they're not with the right firm, they're not being given the right services, or they've got some misunderstanding of what their accountant does. But listen, before we get into this, right, I saw you on LinkedIn, which is where I get most of my interviews from, and I looked at what you were doing, and I was like, we're in really boring industries. Let's be right.
We are.
You know, who on earth wants to talk about insolvency, tax or accountancy? But there are certain people that have a gift to sort of make this stuff interesting. And I think when they've got a northern accent, that helps as well.
Absolutely. Agreed.
And so I looked at you and I thought, you know what? And I dug into your story, and there was a lot of what you have said out there publicly that I really resonated with. So can you fill in the blanks of Dale Pollitt, where he was, what happened, where you are today?
Okay, I'll try my best. Okay, very quick story on this. I won't labour it too long. So Dale Pollitt he wanted to be a footballer. Like most young lads, didn't have any aspiration. I didn't know what an accountant was when I was at school, if I'm being completely honest with you. Left school, didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point in time, and joined a college, a selective college, fairly close to me, because my mates were going there, effectively. Post that, decided it really wasn't for me. I got midway through my A-levels, and I was ambling through life at that point in time. Knew the university route just wasn't for me. That just wasn't my ideal scenario. I just wanted to get in the world of business. That was it. That's all I really knew. And I'd heard of apprenticeships at the time. So I walked into Connections. Do you remember Connections?
I do remember Connections.
Connections, best way of describing it, job centre for kids.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Walked into Connections and said, look, I'm looking for an apprenticeship. Here's my CV. Plumbing, electrics, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I said, your CV's fairly strong. Have you considered a professional apprenticeship? Not really. Never heard of one. And she brought up the lady in Connections, just an example. I said, well, just apply me for that job there. And I literally just got the job as an apprentice accountant over in Wigan. Very small firm. It's a bit dull, okay, at that point in time in my life. I was 17, wasn't really taking it too seriously. I was doing my AAT qualification, which is the apprenticeship qualification, and I was just getting through it, as honest answer, Chris. And you're doing really dull, boring work, very repetitive tasks. A lot of it was still manual back then. Sage still dominated the software market. There was no such thing as cloud accounting, and a lot of manual records still existed. So I was sifting through big bags of receipts and putting them onto an analysis pad even at the time.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, rock and roll indeed. Wasn't really getting me excited. Now, what I could always see, as I could see what my current director was doing at that point in time, He was in front of clients, he was going out winning work, and I always had an aspiration. I thought, I think I'd be good at that. I think it suits my personality. So the apprenticeship and the route through was, let's get through it and get to the next stage. That was always my aim. Let's just get to the next stage. Finished my apprenticeship there, started my chartered accountancy qualifications, and the firm was quite small at the time. Didn't really see there was a path for me to exist in that firm for a long period of time or get the necessary experience I really needed. So decided to move to a small firm or slightly larger firm over in Bolton. And then a knock came at the door when I'd been there for about 6 months from who is my business partner, Martin Smith. And he explained, look, there's nobody here, Dale, right now, who I can see has the aspiration or the ability to be a director one day. And his business partner wanted out in 5 to 7 years. So I decided to jump ship very quickly from that firm to Ryan's, effectively, and that's it. I've been there for ever since. 5 years on the dot, fair play to the guy. He was very good to his word. He said, look, I'm ready to retire. And we started to enter negotiation into the sale, purchase of 50% of Ryan's. At the time I was 26. That was quite daunting, admittedly. The flip side to that was I was taking a big debt on my head. I didn't really have much, Chris. Yeah. I had nothing to lose. Yeah. I didn't have a house. I still lived at home with my parents. I was just getting ready to...
You must have had a lot of faith in you to come good then.
Yeah, absolutely. Because ultimately the PG he made me sign was worthless. Yeah. I didn't really have a great deal to take. Following on from that, me and my business partner have grown the business really successfully over the last 7 years. Since I've been at Ryan's, which is getting on to the 13th year now, we've gone from 12 staff to 34. We'll finish on very shortly. We're just doing a couple bits of recruitment again. And yeah, we've probably transformed the firm from a sleepy old accountants, admittedly. Very, very good. They used to do amazing compliance work, but didn't really shout about it out in the market. I'm much more client-facing. I'd say that's my strength, rather than sitting behind the screen doing compliance work. And the idea from that was, right, let's go and shout about what we're doing great at Ryan's. Let's improve our brand, get the marketing better, and get the sales in. And touch wood, that's gone very well over the last 7 years.
One of the things that jumped out at me when I was sort of looking at where you come from, and I watched your interview for an award you won, I think it was quite a decent award, and there was an interview and there's a little post that you put up there, and you had like some worries about you, really. You had some fears, some like, and I when I read that, I'm like, wow, that's me, because my I've always been worried about what I sound like, because I know absolutely. Like listen, I call a spade a spade. Most people in insolvency sit down, they're greying men who spit the Insolvency Act at people. And I don't talk like that. You know, even my route into this industry has been really, it's not been the norm. I'm not someone who went to university. I found insolvency because I was in an insolvent business. I had a terrible experience, felt like a deer in the headlights, and sort of got into it but absolutely by mistake. And there was something else that you said, that you were from a council estate.
Yep.
Now, my mum watches my YouTube sometimes, and she pulled me the other week. She says, Chris, you was not from a council estate. So I've got to be honest, I wasn't from a council estate. I lived in a council house. Oh, okay. But it wasn't on a council estate.
I see.
But when you started talking about that, and I just thought, that's really actually, that's why I wanted to interview you, because I think there's so many people out there. Like, I had imposter syndrome for a long time. And I meant, you know, so just talk us through those struggles.
It was really interesting because the accountancy industry is still dominated by middle-class individuals. A lot of them are privately educated, and it's very rare, and I've done some work with the Institute of Chartered Accountants recently, to encourage children from different backgrounds to realise it is a possible career path for them. The struggles really come from, you never see yourself as an accountant, which I never have done. I don't think I ever will do, which is a bit of a strange scenario. You don't really think these things are possible when you're a kid, and you don't really feel that you should be there. So that's really where I struggled a little bit. And then I went on, probably the turning point, I went on this 2-day sales course. Great guy who ran it called Martin Bissett. Little plug for him there, he'll like that. Okay. He was amazing. And the first thing he said to me is, the first client you're ever going to win is yourself. I've never forgot that. Never
that.
forgot it. And I think really what he was trying to, the point he was trying to get across was, you've got to convince yourself in your own abilities and the work that you're producing before you'll convince anybody else, because I think that comes across massively. You know when somebody's confident in their abilities and what they can provide. But yeah, it was certainly a struggle at first. You never felt comfortable in the position that you were in, if that made sense.
Listen, absolutely. I think one of the best ways of sort of winning work or building relationships is like just to be really authentic and honest. And there are some jobs that I'm in the boardroom on, like big, complex, and I sometimes pinch myself and think, how have I ended up in here?
Absolutely.
Someone's going to say, oh, you. And it's like, and I can still get that, you know. And do you know what it makes me do? Listen, sometimes I have to pinch myself, you know, because like our business is good, it's growing year on year. We're like we're respected now, you know. And I have to pinch myself and go, wow, how did this happen? It was all by accident. But what it forces me to do is I have to work hard. I believe I have to work harder than most other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I know people who are, some colleagues of mine have just, they've just passed the insolvency practitioner exam. They got the results last Friday, week today. And one of them is an absolute genius, like this guy, and my colleague, the other guy who passed the exam, he says he just retains information in a way like no one else does. And whereas my other mate who's just qualified, he had to work really, really hard, like really studying long hours. And I've always felt like that guy, like literally, if I work harder than someone, if I like, and I know some people say you've got to work smart, but not, you know, over hard. So what's your take on that been? Do you feel like you've had to work harder? What has got you ahead? Because you know what, to be a partner in a firm at 26, you must have something about you.
Yeah, definitely hard work. I love the saying, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah.
I've always lived by that. I used to play a lot of footballs at a few academies when I was younger. Really enjoyed that. And I don't think technically I was the best footballer there. My physical attributes were terrible at the time. I think I was 5 foot tall until I was about 15, something like that.
Where did you play at?
I played at Tranmere, went to Bury for a little while, so a couple of little smaller clubs. Really enjoyed it, just loved playing. It was my whole life.
What position?
Centre mid, always. Right. Midfield general. Bit further back, then you didn't have to do as much running.
Have you dropped further back to centre half now? I bet you're a sweeper today, aren't you?
I started as a 10 and it just slowly went further back on the pitch, the older you get. I don't play anymore, I must admit. I kind of dropped it in lockdown and just never picked it back up again. But certainly I've always been an advocate of just working hard towards a goal. Now, I always say to the guys that come into our place, look, I want you to get somewhere, okay? But we've got to outwork our competition. You've got to outwork your colleagues, effectively. See life as one big game, one big competition. It's quite interesting when you say that to people, like, I don't really want to be in competition. Well, you are in competition with your colleagues and the wider market. Of course you are. That's the whole world of business, unfortunately. So I'm always drilling into these guys. Look, you've got to have a plan. So it's more having a plan that helped me out. So, for example, when I did my Chartered Accountancy exams, I was sad enough to print out the Outlook calendar from my PC, and I would write each night what chapter I was going to study that night. I was so organised and strict with it. We used to have a bit of a joke in my friendship group when I was growing up. Did my Chartered Accountancy exam in my very early 20s, 20 to 22, something like that. And they used to say Dale disappears for about 9 months of the year when he's studying. Yeah. So the kind of 4.5 month lead up to an exam sitting in June, you wouldn't see from Dale, okay? You wouldn't see Dale, you wouldn't hear from him, he would disappear completely. And then I'd go out, I'd have a few nights out, a bit of fun, and I'd be back to studying. And that was my life for 3 years, effectively.
But listen, like, look at the payoff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you can't... very few people will end up successful if they don't put the graft in. Like, it's you've obviously got the anomaly, you know, but that sacrifice back then is paying. I mean, I remember I really pissed about me with work. Like literally, I'm not going to say I was unemployable. Right? I was always very, very good client facing.
Can see that.
I could work hard, but I got bored. You know what I mean? I just got bored. I did so many different types of things growing up, whereas all my mates, they like joiner, builder, bricklayer, sparky. Like I've got a really good mate who's accountant. He's CFO now somewhere, done really well. But one thing I did when I was doing all these different things is I really studied a lot about personal development, a lot about sales and marketing. And I put no one had to force me to do that stuff. Like I've done that many courses over the years. Like literally I've spent more than a university education on this type of thing. And I believe now at where I'm at, that's been a big difference. So for you, that sacrifice back then, I mean, are there any shortcuts to success?
You mentioned personal development. I was really lucky. The firm I was at for a very short period of time, I had an amazing director there, and he was huge into personal development. So at the age of about 20, 21, he got me into it. So I was exposed really early. Fortunate, in a way.
Who was you listening to and watching?
Well, I was reading. I was reading proper books. So I started with the age-old How to Influence and Influence People. I think a lot of people start there, and I think it's a great place to start, personally.
Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, and then we kind of expanded out from there. Now, I started a psychology A-level alongside business studies and economics and a few other things. So I've always been interested in the human mind, how it works. Very surface level, by no means a psychologist. What I really wanted to drill down into is Dale Carnegie is a great book, okay, How to Influence and Influence People. It kind of tells you what to do and the impact that will have. It doesn't tell you why it's having that impact. So I was interested to learn a little bit deeper. So I went off and read things like Chimp Paradox.
Okay. I saw that on one of your posts. Yeah,
it's a great.
Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow.
Yeah, Thinking Fast and Slow is probably the single best book I've ever read. Very academic. It's a tough read.
I tried to read that. I've tried to read that twice and never got.
It's a real tough read, admittedly. The best way of describing it is like Chimp Paradox, but in a deeper level. Okay. And it really highlights why these things are happening. So if you do this is the reason it's happening, this is why. And it just kind of grew from there, and I realised the impact that was having on my career, especially the client-facing impact, okay? So the way I describe to our guys who want to come through and want to make director level, like, yeah, you can be the greatest accountant in the world. If you can't speak to a client and explain something in a very logical fashion, you will limit yourself as to where you can go.
And accountants have got that habit of speaking a language that their customer hasn't got a clue.
Absolutely.
You know,
it's like foreign language to them.
I can speak to an accountant sometimes and think, fuck it, can you just run that by me again? And this is my world, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we did a little bit of work with our marketing team on this, and our whole slogan at Ryan's is count on us to be clear. So the moment somebody comes into Ryan's and starts with the technical jargon, like, no, you don't do that in front of clients. Speak to your colleagues in that way behind the scenes. Great, absolutely fine. The client doesn't need to know. They're paying us to be the experts in that area. They're trusting us. Of course, we have to explain some technical subjects, but we try and humanise it as much as possible. Make sure it's easy to understand for the client and check the client's actually understood it. And we'll labour the point unless the client really gets the teeth into the subject. We want them to understand what they're committing to and the impact of a certain transaction or certain tax elements of what we're doing. So I think that is probably the key from being an accountant to an advisor, a good advisor, competent advisor, is the ability to explain technical subjects in a very easy to understand manner.
How old are you now?
I'm 34.
Okay, so I'm
still young.
I'm 42. I know I don't look it, you know. 42.
Looking great for your age, mate.
Thank you. Very hard paper round.
Yeah.
34 is still what you would deem a young boss. I mean, how have you sort of gone from coming in, learning the ropes, to running a successful business and building a team and empowering? You know, how's that transition been for you?
The first step of the transition, the real first step, when I took over from a retiring partner, which was Clive, bought his 50% of Brian's, that was the hardest bit. I did not enjoy that period in my career. There was about a 6-month period where the imposter syndrome was crazy. Didn't enjoy it. Never felt comfortable. I felt weird going into the office. I suddenly had my own office. It was upstairs on the first floor. It just felt weird. And I really struggled with that. Now, when I was downstairs, it's just the way we terminise this, sorry. Downstairs, all the staff were generally, and the partners used to be upstairs in the office. So when I was downstairs and I was a manager, I didn't find it hard to liaise with my colleagues. I was in the same room, I was helping people out as I went along. And then suddenly when I was upstairs, it felt like there was this weird brick wall between me and the team. I didn't like it. So one of the things that I've tried to do is, look, I'm still just Dale. Like, don't address me in any different way, and just try and make sure the team are really comfortable coming to us. And that's probably been one of the keys of Ryan's and the ability to grow and bring in a team, and the culture we've created is it's open door policy. Dale and Martin, who's my business partner, we're just two guys. We're just two guys who work here, and we're just part of the team. That's it. Once I clicked in my mind, I then found it much easier, okay, to manage and grow. Ryan's had a very flat structure. Going back when I first took over as partner, we had the partners, and we had everyone else, okay? And that was fine, because only the partners were client-facing. And then as we grew, our portfolios just got too big. We couldn't service that many clients to the level we wanted to. We had to bring in a management team. And that's probably been the turning point this last year and the start of this, is we've really set up that management team now, okay? So we've got portfolio managers who sit beneath Martin and I. There's 5 of them now. We probably need a 6 already, because we're filling them up with clients that quickly. We have a fully stocked tax department, fully stocked payroll department, a fully stocked management accounts department, okay? And we've built this structure around it. And I'd say the key to the growth now is treating it like a business, not a profession, okay? So I'm trying my best to pull away from client facing. I'm still going to keep some of it because I love it. I just really enjoy helping people. Get a kick out of it, weirdly. It's quite a satisfying part of my job, and I like meeting people. It's really, really an enjoyable part of what I do. But I'm certainly decreasing that, so then I can concentrate on growing the business, running that management team effectively and managing those guys and making sure it builds out from there.
Obviously, you see me taking little notes there, and then that you started to break down what's in your practice, and I think this is the time to dive into that. So I'll tell you what the average now, if a director's ringing me, there is problems. Yeah, generally big problems. And the number one, I mean, a lot of the time, apparently it's the accountant's fault.
I've heard that. Sometimes I agree. Sometimes
I agree, right? But then I sort of just, and I've spoke to thousands upon thousands of directors, and one thing I realised is they do not understand what accountants can do. They don't understand what the bog standard, your statutory accounts, for me are about as much use as a chocolate tea cosy.
Agreed.
So, tell me, I'm a new punter, okay? What should I be asking the accountant for? And can you give me like some rough ideas of what costs would be? Just general costs, because that's another thing I want to hammer home is an accountant is not a cost. A statutory accounts are costs. There's the only value you get from them is you won't get put in prison. Okay?
Correct.
But what else? How can we change someone's mindset to see you as an investment? What should they be asking you for?
I'll flip this on its head, because I think it should be approached in a slightly different scenario. There is still a place for compliance-based accountants, we'll call them, okay? Compliance is HMRC and Companies House are telling me I have to file something and I've got to do it in a certain format, and I'm going to rely on a professional to prepare that and file it for me in the right time. Great, you're absolutely right, just keep you out of jail, okay? It's not going to have much value, and that is certainly a cost, okay? A necessity, but it's certainly a cost in a business. I always start with, where does the client want to go? What are you trying to achieve in this business? Because if it's a lifestyle business, he's saying, I just want to earn a bit of money, Dale, and yeah, great, we can kind of put you into that compliance bracket with a little bit of tax planning, a little bit of personal tax planning. That's not groundbreaking, okay?
Well, let's dive into that then, okay? For somebody, that might be groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Okay, so, right, lifestyle business, got to get me year-end accounts done. Because for me, if I'm doing that and I'm doing last year's accounts and I'm a lifestyle business, because I see it get out of control. Because these lifestyle businesses, they think the business Money's their money, right?
100%.
So come on, rein me in. I'm coming in, I'm a small business, it's a lifestyle business. What should I be getting from you?
Okay. The number one thing you should be getting is, here's an idea of how you can take money out of the business. If you want to take yourself to this band, here's the tax implication. If you want to take yourself to this band, here's the tax implication. But first of all, we've got to understand, is your business actually making any money?
How do
Is
we
it
do that then?
predicted? Okay. Well, what I'd be doing personally is, let's get on a decent piece of software. Stop messing around with Excel, okay?
Yep.
Get something like Xero in your business, okay? Let's look at getting some rock solid management information out of the software. Now, yes, you've probably got to engage somebody who understands the software, understands accounts to do that, which may be an accountant. Some competent bookkeepers can actually do it. And let's make sure we're actually looking at this on a regular basis.
How regular?
I'd say minimum quarterly for most businesses. Depends what they want to spend, of course, Chris, because these things do come with a cost. And if it's a lifestyle business, it's still going to be a cost to you.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not going to be, Dale's giving me lots and lots of value. Of course, we'll give you some tax plan advice along the way. But if we've got a business that's on a growth trajectory, and this is where I see a lot of businesses fall down, they maybe run before they can walk a little bit. You've really got to have tight costs of controls and budgeting, and even forecasting if we're really going to a decent sized business. But for a lifestyle business, I'd say minimum quarterly accounts, make sure a competent professional set up the reporting format beforehand, and let's see whether it's actually making enough profit after corporation tax.
I'm ever so sorry, that should be turned off. It is turned off. I don't know how that come through.
It's all right, buddy. So let's make sure after corporation tax, i.e. the profits that are actually yours, the directors to distribute, if you want to distribute them, it's making enough money for you to live off. So I always usually start the question with a director, if they've got a lifestyle business, of what do you need out of this business to live off? What's going to pay your bills and sustain your lifestyle? Is that 5k a month? Is it 10k a month? Is it 20k a month? I don't know.
I mean, when you start getting to sort of 10k a month, I mean, aren't we? We're lucky up here, aren't we? Like I have friends down in London and Essex, and like their exes are, you know. So for me, if I was to live on more than £50,000 a year, and sometimes, you know, like last year I went a little bit over, I'm getting absolutely battered by the tax man. So surely the game is, can you live on under 50?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's where we always start with the client. If you think what under 50 actually means, it's 4k a month, roughly speaking, in your hand.
It's not footballers' wages.
It's not footballers' wages, but most people can sustain their lifestyles. Interest rates have shot up, so a lot of people, mortgages shot up, and they need a little bit more out of the business. We tend to have 3 bands of client, okay? Bottom band is 50k or below, okay? I'm going to stay in my basic rate tax band. Really tax efficient to do that. That's when limited companies still retain some tax efficiency. Because the money's coming into the company, if the company makes more than 50k in profits, but you only take out 50k to live off, the company pays anywhere between 19 and 25% corp tax. You're only paying a small amount of personal tax on the amounts that you're taking out if you do it via a salary and a dividend. Okay. The next band of clients we have is 100k. Okay, total income from the company. Yes, you're in the 40% tax bracket, effectively the higher rate tax bracket at that point, but you're not going into that horrible 60% tax bracket gap, which is the bit between 100 and 125k, where you start to lose the personal loan, which is the bit you earn tax-free. Usually the 12,500 roughly you earn tax-free. If you can live off that, great, and you can sometimes bring in spouses, etc., into your business to make sure you've got 2 lots of those allowances, not just one.
Yeah.
And then we have the really good clients, okay, or really crazy clients,
the big
to describe them, and they go, I've took what I've taken, it's fine, just issue it as a dividend, we're sorting it out. Absolutely fine. And they don't care what the tax liability is. They've probably got a bit more money than you and I, Chris.
Yeah.
So they're not concerned about the tax liability, they're taking it and they're living off it.
So let's say they take it, I don't know, someone's taking £200,000 a year out of a business. Roughly what would their personal tax be on something like that?
Good question, $1 million question. So I'll give you an easier one, okay? You take out 100k via salary and dividends, roughly 20k in tax.
Yeah.
Okay, every year personal tax. The bit that catches clients out, you're paying this tax in retrospect.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you start in a couple of weeks' time on the 6th of April, the first time you're going to pay tax is not next year, it's going to be the year after. You're going to go into the January after that. So you're about 19 months behind from when you first started taking this money to paying your first tax bill. So because you're so far behind, that first tax bill, HMRC, don't just pay us 20 grand, we want 50% towards the current year's tax bill.
Yeah.
So it's really 30k in the first year. That catches a lot of clients out.
Yeah.
And then you're into payments on account, which basically means you're then ahead. So you paid a bit towards this year, you pay another 50% in July. So then if you're on 100k, roughly 10k in January, roughly 10k in July every year. Okay. You start going above that, it gets a bit more complex to calculate because you're into that horrible 60% tax bracket. Okay. And you start to then go into the additional rates of tax, which are 39%, roughly speaking, on dividends these days. So 100k is the easy one I can give you off the cuff.
Sound. So, smaller business, lifestyle business, quarterly management accounts. Let's take it up to the next level of client. What does that look like?
Okay, so I'll give you an example of one of the clients that we work with. So they will effectively engage us and say, look, Dale, it's usually us who drive it in actual fact. Because we don't let the client come to us and say, I want this service, I want that one. We want to understand where the client's trying to get to. So I've got a client that we're working with who plans to sell within the next 5 years. They've got a fantastic business, it's tech-based, behind the scenes, and they're saying, right, we want 20 mil. That's our minimum sales price, okay? But we've got 5 years to get it there. I think we're probably fishing around 10 mil valuation at the moment. So we've got a little bit of work to double that value in a 5-year period. I'll say to them, right, if you want to get there, this is what a 20 million sale would look like and what a buyer would expect to see. They'd expect to see a board of directors set up, a really robust company structure. They'd expect you to be hosting board meetings minimum monthly, which we can of course facilitate. And this is how they'd expect you to report financially. So we're setting budgets, we're setting forecasts, and we're sitting down as a management team with a strict agenda once a month, board of directors, to make decisions based on those financials that we're producing. Okay. Not only that, we've now added in a bit more complexity and said, right, okay, here's your head of ops. Right, you need to bring me a report, and here's what you're reporting on each month from an operations perspective. Here's the head of marketing. This is what they're bringing in to the meetings every time. So the bigger the business and the bigger the goal, it's usually the bigger the goal, the more complexity and more service they need. Now, we took that client, interestingly enough, when we got hold of them, they'd gone from 0 to 12 mil turnover in 2 years, okay, from a standing start, but were hemorrhaging money. All the usual growing pains, grown way too quickly, recruited too quickly because they had a necessity to do, didn't have the right structure in place, weren't setting any budgets or financials, so they'd see some cash in the bank and they'd spend it.
Yeah.
And it was going really
What
quickly.
sector?
It's actually in utilities, so
Right.
they install boilers effectively. That's what it looks like. That's all subcontracted behind the scenes. They just do the tech, so they get the sales in for a very technical website, and then they install boilers on the back end.
Okay.
So if you looked at it, Chris, you think they're a boiler installer. They're not. They're a tech-based business. It's what they really are.
What changed then?
Budgeting was the biggest key to that. Okay, what you have around that table is everyone has a different expertise. Okay, somebody's heading up marketing, somebody's heading up ops, somebody's heading up finance, which is Ryan's in actual fact.
So do you, in fact, I'll come back to that, go on.
So, and because they've all got different areas of expertise, the marketing guy certainly isn't going to be an expert in finance, and the finance guys, i.e. Ryan's, aren't an expert in marketing or the operations for that style of business. The biggest headache was nobody was controlling the departments, if that makes sense. So when we've come in, we've got finance is us, we set your budget, you stick to the budget. Okay, so quite a rigid process. When you've got people who aren't financially trained managing their own budgets, there isn't a budget, unfortunately, sometimes, Chris, and they just spend the money, okay? Because they don't understand the implications that come with that money that's in the bank, like pay-as-you-earn and national insurance for their employees' wages, like VAT, which only comes around once every 3 months. And it was surprising them every time it came round.
I get it.
So having that cash flow forecasting in place and the strict budget of saying, no, if we make this much in sales, here's your marketing budget. Great. So that's the way we've worked it.
And did you set those budgets? So one thing, what I wanted to ask is, what is that as a service from you guys? Is it fractional FD? What does that entail?
I don't really like the term fractional FD because I think it's quite confusing. I think most business owners think, what the hell is a fractional FD?
I just keep seeing it on people's LinkedIn
absolutely.
profiles.
It sounds great. Yeah. It's a great term. And as you see outsourced finance function quite a lot.
I've not seen that one before.
So it's more of an outsourced finance function. Effectively, they have one person in-house who does bookkeeping.
Yeah.
And then we do everything else from there.
What is everything else?
Everything else basically means we'll reconcile things, make sure the accounts are spot on in the software. But then from that, we're producing a reporting pack on a monthly basis, which includes profit and loss, balance sheet, budgeting, forecasting.
Okay.
All in there. Now, they're the bits where you need a technically competent advisor to be able to get those reports. But the reports are only half of it, okay? Because I could put a report in front of a client and they won't have a clue what it means. It's helping the client to understand what that report means, how it impacts them in the business, and how they can use that report to their advantage, okay? That's where the monthly board meetings come in, real key. I'm not a big fan of management accounts and just throwing them out the door and going, there's a set management accounts, because 99% of our clients are not financially trained. So why the hell would I just throw them a set of management accounts without helping them to understand and explain it to them and understand what the impact and potential opportunities are within the business?
So this is the interesting bit. Because you've gone from people thinking accountant, the analogy, how you started going in with a shoebox full of receipts and getting some accounts and going, there's no use to that business there other than the compliance stuff.
Correct.
But now you're talking about spotting opportunities. And I've seen it in my own businesses. I'm here day in, day out, like we're in the thick of it. And it was only when sort of this probably last quarter I've said, like you said, focus more on bringing I used to dive on $5,000 liquidation. Get off, I'll ring him, this client who needs more attention than an admin where you're billing big money and I miss stuff. Like I'd get that profit and loss at the end of the month. I'd be like, right, yeah, okay, that's good. But I know I've missed opportunities, and for us it's like, well, what marketing channel actually works best? Well, why don't we do more of that? Is that the type of information that you're pointing out? So let me ask a question. Sorry to put you on the spot. If somebody wanted that, what would that cost from? I know that's how long's a piece of string.
Yeah.
Because how much would a business have to start from, the starting figure to get that type of service?
To get a monthly service like that. I'll start by saying it will not be a small business, okay? You're talking about businesses here that are probably turning over millions of pounds rather than hundreds of thousands.
And where would it start from, though? You know, like, to find... let's talk about Ryan's. Let's find a good fit for Ryan's. Where, for that type of service, to spot the opportunity, the finance, have your own bolt-on finance function, what do they need to be turning over? What's your ideal client in that scenario on a basic level? Okay,
basic level, ideal client. We've got a business that wants to achieve something. Okay, it's pointless if you've got a business that wants to tick along each year. So we've got a goal. We've got usually an end goal. Okay, I want to get to X turnover. I want to sell out for this much. It'll be some kind of exciting end goal. Usually turnover a few million quid. Okay, anywhere between 1 and 5, you'd say are perfect. There seems to be a nice little sweet spot, but want to take it to that next level. I find a lot of businesses get to that level, and then it needs structure then all of a sudden, because the directs can't do it all. The business owner can't be at the coalface constantly. He's got to pull himself away and try and get this business running day-to-day operations-wise without him or her there, effectively. So you'd probably say minimum £1,500 a month kind of investment. Now, to give you a feel for that, we made one single recommendation to a client recently. Very simple recommendation. They'd never had cash in the bank before. Suddenly they've got cash in the bank. We recommended they explore the opportunities of simply, this is very simple, just putting it in a high interest business savings account. Okay, they now earn £6,500 a month just from that one simple spot and opportunity. And I know that seems like such a throwaway comment and such a simple thing to advise, but because the client's working in the business day to day, can't see the wood for the trees.
I get it. I had a conversation with somebody. If you've got cash in your business, I mean, I tell you what, my worry, a little bit of personal therapy. I've always thought, oh God, what happens if it's all over next month? And I felt like that all my life, like that. that catastrophe.
Of course.
And that's been good because it stops me spunking money, right? But it has also, I've definitely lost opportunities in the past.
Yeah, you will do. I mean, there's a balance somewhere in between, isn't there? The natural entrepreneurial mindset is to go gung-ho at everything. And if you do that, there's going to be massive risk, potentially massive reward. Depends on how successful.
But I must be traumatized from all the mistakes that I've seen
You're
over
probably
the years,
exposed to
because
it.
I don't see. My clients are generally not success stories. They've set off like that, big life, bigger, and it's like.
What I find quite interesting is we are the worst. Accountants are the worst people for growing businesses, or can be. We're trained to be sceptical. Okay? That's a big part of being a chartered accountant, and then that makes you very pessimistic in your approach and probably risk averse. Most accountants are very naturally risk averse, but we're also exposed to a lot of scenarios. So I'm in a very privileged position. We have for nearly 800 limited companies at Ryan's. You see the good, bad, and the ugly of everything. And because you've been trained like that, a lot of accountants will focus on the bad stories. Okay, but if I could say, well, how many of my clients actually go for a liquidation every year?
How many?
Tiny, 1 or 2, maybe a year, if that. Some of them are actually MVLs where they've decided to liquidate. So it's not they've gone out of business. They're using it more to just shut the business down.
Tax efficient way of doing it.
Tax efficient way to shut the business down and let's retire and get our cash out of the business, the wealth that we've generated. So we are the worst at that. We're awful for it, but we're exposed to so many situations. It can naturally make you very pessimistic away from it. Now, it's much easier for me to advise somebody else's business, okay? Because you can show them the risks and potential risks, but you can also show them potential opportunities much easier. I always find if you parachute somebody into a business who's overlooking a completely new pair of eyes, they spot things that you've just never even considered. And sometimes we have people come into our business who we parachute in just for a second opinion on things, and they'll suggest something that's so bloody obvious. I can't believe I didn't think of that. But it's easy for them because they're not in the day-to-day.
Where are people missing things? Come on, let's sort of, let me pull some of those nuggets out. High interest savings account, great. But what else? What are some things that you're seeing people just miss because of that?
I think that is a big one because for many moons, we never got interest.
What's a decent rate of interest then in one of these things?
4-ish, it's just dropped slightly.
How long do you have to lock the money up for?
You don't, okay? So there are certain providers that will accrue the interest daily and it's instant access.
Okay.
The high street banks will force you to lock for about 90 to 95 days and pay you slightly less interest, about 3.8% currently as we stand. Other things that are very, very common for us to advise on, people just aren't taking advantage of. Spouses in a business, if done in the right way, okay? You have got to get married, unfortunately. So
Go on, how does that work?
I always joke with clients, say there's got to be some advantage of marriage. I can say that I'm getting married this June, so I'm allowed to say it, I think. There's got to be some advantage of marriage, so you might as well as use it. Okay. So, for example, if you've got a wife that runs a business and a husband is a stay-at-home husband, effectively, and is looking after the kids, what you have there is 2 lots of tax allowances. Okay, personal tax allowances. So, wife has 50k she can earn in the basic rate tax band. Husband also has 50k. We quite often see wife will have all the shares in her name, pulling out all the dividends, taking out 100k. Okay, very simply, bring the husband into the business, give him some shares.
Do they have to be married for that?
They do. Okay, if you're not married, so you and I are in business together, or
I thought you were going to say we're going to be married. Yeah.
You do look well for your age, but maybe not just yet. If you've got somebody who is going into business together, let's just say they're not a married couple, they're just partners at this point in time. HMRC treat married couples differently for tax purposes. They treat them as one, almost. So you can swap and change shares free of tax. If you were feeling let's say you're feeling very generous today, Chris, and say, Dale, you can have some shares in my business, okay? HMRC will come to you and tax you as if you sold them to me at market value, because it stops you from shifting wealth to other people without incurring a tax liability. So even though you've received no money, they're going to send you a big tax bill because you've given me some shares. And that's what happens with unmarried couples, or can happen, okay? But when you're married, it doesn't matter. Tax-free exchange of shares between the two.
What about not man and wife, man and missus, and they are both 50%, they both hold shares in the business, so they can both draw down, like, I don't know, let's say that £50,000 a year to both keep them under that 50 grand so they're not getting spanked off the tax man. How does that work?
So effectively, what we need to do is we need to make sure the shareholdings are even to be able to facilitate that. Because if the business issues a dividend, okay, it just goes in direct proportion to each shareholder.
Okay.
So if one person has 60% of shares, one has 40, we issue a £100,000 dividend. This person's getting 60k and this person's getting 40k. It's that simple. Okay. If you've got a husband and wife and they have no other income away from this business, make it 50-50.
Yeah.
It's like the simplest tax planning ever. I call it very vanilla tax planning. Okay. But make sure you.
But people miss it
all the time. We see it all the time. Signed up 2 businesses in the last month where various husbands or wives, spouses in the background didn't work, had no other form of income, but this person was a high rate taxpayer and this person had no income. It makes no sense whatsoever. Okay. Other ones, very, very common to be missed, pension contributions. I always say there's 3 ways you take money out of a business where you retain the ultimate benefit. Okay. Tax efficient vehicles.
Yeah.
And tax efficient vehicles currently are commercial vehicles, are very tax efficient.
Oh, but come on, I got sucked into that, right? Have you seen that electric Audi in the car park?
No, I've not seen that. I didn't spot it.
So my accountant, he says, go and get an electric car. And I got an electric car. I'm coming from Centre Parks at Christmas a few years ago. It took me an hour to get on a pump, right? As I'm getting off, 2 women are close to fighting to get on the pump. And I'm thinking, I just don't. I know there's benefits, but having that, we just don't seem to be. Have you got an electric car?
I've got one at the moment, because I've crashed my car.
What have you got?
I've got a Tesla at the moment because I've crashed my car, but I did have an electric Audi a couple of years ago.
Which one?
The Audi e-tron, the original Audi e-tron, the kind of Jeep 4x4 style one.
The Q4?
Well, it would have been the Q8.
Right,
the original version of the Q8 e-tron. They don't do as many miles as they say they do. They hate the
winter. When it's cold,
they hate the winter. The battery's terrible in the winter. They're very expensive to service, despite the fact you're looking and go, there's no engine, what the hell are you servicing? So we have these realistic chats with clients who say, yeah, of course it's tax efficient. You've got to make sure it works for you. Yeah. We won't just say, do it because it's tax efficient. Look at how you're going to use it. Look at what's actually involved in it. They're also very expensive to insure, a lot of them, because they're high insurance groups. But I always say to clients, don't have all electric in your household. Have a normal car as well, maybe a hybrid.
Or a hybrid,
or a petrol and diesel. Great, have one of those for longer journeys, because they are a pig on longer journeys. If you go south of here, it's great, the charging infrastructure's there.
Yeah, exactly.
You go to Scotland and you're in a bit of trouble. I did it once in the Audi and I got to about 15 miles of charge left.
I got down to 0 twice.
Jeez.
Like literally 0 twice, and like living on the edge. Yeah.
Wow.
It was, because here's another thing. You know, like you go on your map and you none of the bloody charge points work. No. So you get there, I've got 20 miles, I'm going, right, I'll go to that one in Lytham. It didn't work. And I go, right, it didn't work in St Anne's. And like, so
get range anxiety from it.
Listen, if you want an electric car, go for it. I've had a very bad experience. But my brother loves it. Yeah. He's happy as a pig in muck.
Yeah. They work for some people, they don't work for others. So when I'm explaining this to a client, he said, well, what are you going to use it for? He said, well, I do 20,000 miles a year. I'm like, it's not for you. So it's simply not for you. You're going to spend more time charging the vehicle than driving it, potentially. There's a great app, by the way, called ZapMap. Okay.
That was the one I used to get. Yeah.
ZapMap works quite well.
It didn't 18 months ago.
You've been stung by it, I can tell. Once bitten, twice shy. Pension contributions from the company are incredibly tax efficient. Another way where you keep...
Can I talk about that as well? Yeah. They worry me. Okay. They worry me, the fact that like it's going to be locked up for such a long period of time, and this is genuinely what happens if there's a financial collapse. You know, like
you've got to remember any form of investing is at risk, and that's what happens with a pension in the background. However it's managed, whether it's an unmanaged one or you get a finance advisor to manage it, somebody's going off and investing that money. Usually in stocks and shares a lot of the time in the background, and different bonds and various things. But it's at risk, of course it is. Now, if you look at any graph of how shares have performed over a period of time, they generally go up long term. Yeah. The unfortunate thing is, Chris, you might pick a year where you go, right, I'm ready to retire, want my hands on my pension. Oh, the stock market's really down at the moment. Yeah. It's not worth as much as I thought it was. And then that drives a retirement decision. So I'm always saying to clients, don't rely just on a pension. Maybe have some property, have a business investment.
Do you have a pension?
Else. I do, absolutely. But I've diversified the risks. And so we've got commercial property, got businesses which I own, and then I've got a pension. You think, well, if one's down, hopefully the other's up.
Yeah.
And you're just spreading the risk around. I wouldn't lump it all into one per se. But they're probably the three areas where you can retain money. So I've not mentioned the third one actually. Directors' salaries, dead easy. Use that 12.5 grand you've got tax-free every year to pay a salary out. Use your spouse if they're not using their allowances as well. They're like your throwaway, very starting points of tax planning, and everybody should be utilising them, in my opinion. Pensions, the only way I describe using it to a client is only put cash in you do not need and you don't want to see for a while.
Yeah.
So it's spare cash, sat in your business, collecting dust, effectively.
Yeah,
Which you might not see much of that being in your industry.
Yeah, but I
Probably
mean,
of
even
any
from
scale.
our point of view, right? We've got a healthy, really healthy balance sheet, and it was just the idea. And again, it's that fear of, oh God, well, I don't know what's going to happen next year. You know, it's like, and we've got ample cash. Like we could not do another job, and we'd be fine for years and years and years. But the thought of, because my accountant's gone, Chris, just put some money into it.
Yeah.
But the thought of locking that away, like it just, there's something about it, it's scary. And that's probably something with me, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I completely understand it. I completely understand your
And
your
also,
thoughts on it.
I sort of kind of thing is, well, if I keep it in my business, there'll be, what if an opportunity comes along that I need that money for? And that's...
100%. And that's why I'm saying the advice usually is only when you want to kiss goodbye to this money for a long period of time.
Yeah.
You can access a little bit of it when you're 55, but generally speaking, you're 60 plus before you access the
And
next
I'm a
pension.
very all or nothing guy as well, so that's probably, I need to perhaps... Jed's smiling.
Yeah. Absolutely. So they're probably the three throwaway ones that you just say to clients from the off. But a compliance accountant, I feel, should be giving you them, because I don't even class that as advisory. That's your very vanilla basics of accounting and tax planning.
Are there any other ones, any top shelf ones you want to disclose today?
If you've got an ultimate idea of selling your business at some point in time, looking at restructuring and getting a holding company. Can be
Definitely wanted to talk about that.
Okay.
Right. Come on, let's get into it.
Okay, so holding companies have a particular advantage when you come to sell. Okay, there's a little known piece of legislation and it's called substantial shareholding exemption. So once you've got a holding company above your trading company, which owns the shares in it, and then you sit up here as the ultimate business owner, the shareholder of the holding company, if that holding company's owned those shares for over 12 months, if you sell the trading company, all of that money flows tax-free into your holding company. You pay nothing, no tax at all on it. Disadvantage of that kind of structure is it's locked in a holding company, okay? So if you want to take it out, you're either liquidating the holding company, okay, which you might not get entrepreneurs relief on, or what's now known as business asset disposal relief. But big advantage is the tax saving. So it only works for people, the way I describe this one, Chris, is saying, what are you going to do with this cash when you get it? If a client says to me, I'm going to buy a £5 million house and 5 Ferraris, holding company isn't for them. It's not going to work. They need to just keep the shares directly in their name, sell it, pay the personal tax, and get the money in their own bank. They say, well, I don't really need anything, Dale. I'm mortgage free. I'm happy with my house. I'll probably downsize if I do anything. And you know, I don't really like cars and exciting things. Well, great. Lock it up into a holding company, okay? Get it tax free and use that holding company to invest. Okay, buy some property in there. You can do corporate investments in stocks and shares, whatever floats your boat, okay, and live off the returns from that, okay. Now it's really powerful then for inheritance tax planning, okay, because these holding companies can become something known as a family investment company. So you slowly pass shares down to the children over a period of time and make sure that it's removed from your estate for inheritance tax planning. That's another bad thing about pensions, unfortunately, at the moment. The Labour government have flicked the switch. Pensions never used to form part of your estate for inheritance tax. They are going to in a couple of years.
All change in it. So on the holding company, what if they're not going to sell? What if there's no aspiration to sell a business? What are the benefits of having a holding company?
Okay, a few major benefits. The number one benefit I see of a holding company is protection. Okay, let's describe your company.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a company here. Okay, let's say you give a bit of bad advice. You've overstepped the mark, and a client says, right, we're coming suing you for that bit of bad advice. Okay, your professional indemnity insurance decides not to pay out because you've acted negligently, you stand to lose anything that's in your company. All the cash that's in there, all the assets that are in there, okay? And it will go, okay, if the litigation goes against you. If you've got a holding company, you've drawn this invisible line of safety, okay? We then can move up the assets tax-free to the holding company, whether that's cash, we'll do a dividend and move the cash balances up, whether it's physical assets, whether it's an intangible asset like a patent, a trademark, or even a website. Yeah. You store everything that's valuable to you. So if this company ever ceases to exist, well, guess what? You've got everything to form a new company because it's actually the holding company that holds all of the.
Well, what are the downsides to something like that?
Expense, usually.
What is the expense?
So if you've got really depends who you use, is the honest answer, and the complexity, but you'd say minimum fee for something like that, accountancy fees, £5,000 plus VAT to do the restructure. Now, if I'm sitting in front of a client, they've got a £5 million cash balance in the business, and they say, well, I can protect that £5 million for a £5,000 fee. Yeah. It suddenly seems very, very efficient to do so. If you want to move hard assets like property, okay, any tangible assets, you're going to have to involve a solicitor to do the conveyancing. So that's an added cost. And there's sometimes stamp duty on moving these shares to the holding company. Now, we make an application to HMRC. If you're moving 100% of the shares up, you can avoid that stamp duty. If you're not, unfortunately, you've got to pay stamp duty at 0.5%.
Why would you not move 100% of the shares up?
If you don't own 100%. So if you and I are in business together, you own 70%, I own 30%, and you say, Dale, I want a holding company, I say, I don't want one, you're only moving your 70%.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Right. What are the biggest challenges business owners in the UK seeing in 2025?
We'll do across the board rather than industry specific. I can't speak now. So I think there's some very industry specific ones, but we'll do across the board. Challenges, much more expensive to employ people. Okay.
And it's about to,
it's getting worse.
People are going to feel that, aren't
In
they?
a few weeks, minimum wage is going up quite substantially. So if I've got a hospitality style business who relies on a lot of labour, okay, usually fairly low cost labour, that's just jumped up. Not only that, they then have to contribute to the pensions, which has been around for a little while, but they've increased the amount of employers' national insurance that people are paying from 13.8% to 15%. So the overall cost of employing somebody has just got a lot more expensive. Now, added to that, the changes in the budget around employment law have given workers much more power. Okay, so from day one, workers are likely to get full employment rights now. So if you make a bad recruitment decision, it's going to be very hard to get that person out of your business. You've got to follow a process, because we used to have a rough 2-year window where we got to work somebody out. There is consultation at the moment to bring in a 9-month probationary period, statutory, but it's not been decided on just yet.
It is. It just seems to be, and I'm always careful not to go down the politics route. But like, we have never been busier. Like, the insolvency numbers are just year
they're crazy.
Year.
Nuts at the moment.
And the next 12 months, I told you I was talking to Red Flag yesterday. Their projections, and they're pretty hot on these things. And it just seems to be stifling the small business owner.
It does. Let's think about what really causes that at the higher level. When there is a lack of consumer confidence, people stop spending money. We know that. People hold on to what they've got and think, I can't afford it. I'm scared of interest rates going up again. I'm scared of the cost of living, electricity prices. And that's really what drives most businesses, ultimately, is getting consumers spending money. That affects usually the top tier businesses first, your likes of your supermarkets, major global conglomerates. They start to feel the pains, and then they stop investing, okay? And then that trickles slowly down to our market, which is the small and medium-sized business market, and they're hit really hard, okay? So if one of the big boys pulls what they consider a small contract, I might have a construction client that's relying on that work to come in, and it disappears overnight.
The ISG collapse has absolutely just battered the old sector, hasn't
it? And that's what's happening. So consumer confidence, I think, is a big issue. Okay, I'm not a big fan of mainstream media. Don't like it. I don't like the way they go about the business, and they have a big part to play in how successful an economy is.
Talk a recession into existence.
Correct, and that's what's unfortunately I think is playing a bit of an issue as well. We've got increased corporation tax rates, which are hurting businesses. People say it's only 6% increase from 19 to 25. That's nearly a third, okay, in real terms.
Yeah.
That's a massive increase. So if you think about it as a percentage of a percentage, it's 33% nearly.
Yeah.
That's huge. So it's changing decisions, higher cost of lending, generally across the board over the last few years, is now starting to bite people. What I've actually seen, Chris, personally, I think the help that the government gave out in COVID was amazing, okay? I thought they were great with it. The bounce back loans, furlough scheme, it really helped business, and they were quick to get it out to the market. Fair play to them. There was probably things they could have improved upon, given more time, but they were really up against it. I think that artificially kept a lot of businesses going. Yeah. And now we're seeing those cracks reappear. You just put a plaster over lots of businesses. They had this really cheap lending. They had a bit of support.
Staff were getting paid. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Revenue weren't winding anyone up.
Correct, yeah. Well, we've actually seen that, and I think
it's brutal.
Yeah, it's crazy at the moment. I've not seen the likes of this for 15 years, I would say. When I first came into the industry 17 years ago, the revenue were to be feared. I think we're getting back around to that. Everything does come full circle in our industry usually. They are being really, really aggressive on chasing debts.
Obviously, I get to know enforcement agents just because I'm pretty sure I know the one that knocks about your neck of the woods, and I make a habit of having a chat with them. You know, if like I've got a case and I need to speak to somebody, and it has, sentiment has changed. Like they are out there, and there are petitions that are being served that would never have been served 12 months ago.
Yeah,
I've got one up in Scotland. Obviously, it's a bit different up there. There's no court date. There's no chance to go and get an adjournment to get it into a process. And normally, as a matter of course, it's like if they're going to appoint, just say, right, speak to the revenue, sign the authority form, and let them know that this is getting dealt with. And that would normally be enough to go, okay, yeah, we won't take any further action, we'll let you get into voluntary. 3 days later, winding up petition. Wow. And in Scotland, it's like you're getting wound up then, the HMRC aren't adjourning, and that's... People should never let it get that far.
No.
Like literally, the revenue, even though sentiment has changed, right? It's not like he's missed his VAT return, we'll wind him up next week. It's directors who have put off... I'll tell you a horror story. Like, this is the worst one I've ever seen. We got a call on New Year's Day. My brother took it. Lad up in Scotland, nice guy. He just ran up huge HMRC debts, and what he'd done is he bought, instead of paying HMRC, he bought all his assets in the business. Like, there was 19 vehicles that had no finance on, and they petitioned between Christmas and New Year to wind him up. Wow. And it's like, well, we've got Pinsent Masons on the phone, we've spoken to the revenue, and they've said, listen, if you'd have rang us 2 weeks ago, we'd have spoken to you. But now the petition's been presented, we're not backing down. Wow. And he lost everything, this guy. Wow. He lost, and his mistakes, he should have paid the bloody revenue. Yeah. But he's lost 19 vehicles. And here's the crazy thing is, if the idea was to try and get a CVA arranged, so he could have refinanced the vehicles and pull out, I think it was 300 to 500 grand. It was a significant amount of money, but he needed 60 days, paid the rest over 3 years. He said no. And in breakup value, they probably will get about 350 grand. Wow. And you just think, wow. Yeah, and I mean, the key thing, HMRC, you've got to take advice. You've got to speak to them, have a conversation with them. You know, whatever you do, don't bury your head in the sand. Listen, I'm mindful of time, right? And I told you we won't get through hardly any of these, so we might have to go for a take two. But if you could go back to Dale at 21 years old, what advice would you give him about business and life?
It's a good question. It's a great question. Trying to think what Dale at 21 looked like and what his mindset was like. I think I just started my journey of really taking my career seriously at that point in time. I'm midway through my chartered accountancy exams, and you can see where the trajectory can go. This is going to sound completely counterintuitive. I'd probably advise Dale to focus less on being the world's best accountant and focus more on personal development, genuinely. I think technical skills and competency in that area, absolutely that needs to be there. There's no doubt about it. That's never going to drive you as an amazing business person. I think the technical skills are great for being an accountant, probably don't really matter for being a business owner. And probably switch my mindset earlier on focusing on being a business owner rather than being an accountant per se is probably the key, because I probably only switched my mindset on that in my mid-20s of what I wanted to position myself as. Am I the world's best accountant? No. There's lots more technically competent accountants than me. I think I've got a decent nose for business and how to drive that forward. And I think that was probably my advantage over the last few years. So I'll probably say, focus on business more than being a boring accountant, Chris.
Because we're taught at school to learn a skill. Now, like my little girl's dyslexic, okay? She hates maths. She doesn't like writing. I says, Layla, don't worry. I says, just make sure you've got people around you who can do that type of stuff. And we come out of school being taught to focus. One of the things that I think helped me, I was naughty me at school. I was, Jed, wasn't I? I was very naughty. And one of the things that has really helped me, I think, is I never really settled till very later in life. You know, I was doing whatever I was doing, you know what I mean? And it sort of allowed me to realise what I wanted in my life, you know, and I didn't want to be that builder or that trade, you know. It sort of allowed me a little bit of time. So I think that's another thing, is you don't have to have everything figured out. No, you know, you've just got to be working you, haven't you? Work on yourself, invest in yourself. Definitely. Because most people don't, do they? They don't. They settle for low.
They settle for low. But I think what's really key, and where my mindset probably is better now, is understand the value of the team that you surround yourself with. And I think there's lots of people at Ryan's who are better than me at lots of different things.
That's a good sign.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the way it's been engineered over a period of time. Surround yourself with amazing people and you'll probably be a success yourself.
I want to wrap this up. It has been, honestly, really enjoyed this chat, and I think we could go for another hour, genuinely.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is going to go out on my YouTube, it'll go out on my LinkedIn. Where can people find out more about you and this fantastic company that you are from?
Okay. LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. My personal profile is probably the easiest place. I'm starting to do some videos. I'm no expert like you, Chris, but I'm getting there slowly but surely. It's LinkedIn. And what I always advise people to do is go and check out the Ryan's website. But what I really like people to do is read the reviews.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Go to Google reviews and have a little look on what our clients are saying about us.
Yes.
Okay? They're all genuine reviews from our clients. We work very hard to get those reviews onto there, and they will tell you a little bit of a story about what's good about Ryan's.
I love that. Yeah, we are so proud of our Trustpilot reviews.
I've read a few of them. They're good.
We've not written any of them either. You know, it's like
Chris, it's from Chris. Every
no, because you can see some, can't you? They go, John was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, that isn't a real. That's not like, I want war and peace. You know how we've saved a life. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And like, there's effort goes into it. But honestly, mate, it has been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
So, gang, listen, Chris Worden, Director First. We really appreciate the support on these podcasts. We are here to bring entrepreneurs in to help educate you, to hopefully learn a thing or two and not make the common mistakes that people are making. On the other side of things, the rest of our content is there designed to explain corporate insolvency in a way that you understand. If you want free and independent advice, pick up the phone to us today, and what we're going to do, we're going to show you if there are any problems attached to you personally if you go through one of these insolvency process. Thanks for your time. God bless.